Hey guys, welcome back. We are live. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Thank you guys for joining us. I am your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be a great episode. If you're like me, you love fitness, you love mindset, you love talking about mental health, this is the show that you're going to want to listen to. My friend Adam is going to be dropping fire. So, guys, I just want to thank our sponsors. First of all, if you guys are veterans and you want to start your own business, definitely check out OVF, Operation Veteran Freedom. Talk to Christopher and Liam. They actually helped launch my business, which I'm doing right now and doing really well at. They actually helped me, and they actually helped me launch this, which is my new Vertical Momentum coffee, which is not your mother's coffee, is ass kicking coffee. And as you guys know, whatever I do, I make no money on. So all my proceeds go to help Project Die Hard 22 to help veterans struggling with homelessness and mental health issues. So if you guys love coffee, check it out. I'll be dropping a link. But guys, this is going to be a great episode. Make sure you share it. Make sure you heart it and leave comments so we know you're listening. Adam, my brother, what's going on?
Well, I'll tell you what, the coffee that you have there, that's going to be part of my new pre-workout. So I appreciate you bringing that on. But thanks for having me on. I'm really thrilled to be here. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what kind of little boy was Adam?
Absolutely. Well, I was a somewhat of a shy, awkward boy. Some would call me a spaz. Some would still call me a spaz, I'm sure. But I grew up in a town called Dana Point in California, which is just in Southern California, right smack dab in the middle between San Diego and Los Angeles. It's a little surf town, was a little surf town. At the time, it was pretty secluded. My parents raised me and went to school down there and mostly lived down there until around college. I was, somewhat of a, I'd say I'd have a really normal childhood. From, my parents were, together. They were great parents. They have been great parents, and they really raised me well to do what's right and everything like that. But as I was growing up, I just had this budding, insecurity about me, this insecurity that I was never really good enough, really wasn't, part of the social scene, a social anxiety that I didn't know really what it was. And, as I grew up and I went into high school, I started to find a little bit more of my own, started to get really into music and discover that when I got disciplined with music, I, really excelled at it. And, but really shied away from a lot of the sports, never really got good at the sports.
Now, first of all, I want to hop back real quick.
Sure.
Because I am the world's okayest guitar player. So what kind of music were you into?
So I played the cello. It was the epitome of cool in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Chicks love the cello player.
Absolutely. So I played the cello and I ended up getting pretty good. And I realized I wasn't great academically. So I realized that was probably my only ticket into college. So I got really intense about that. And, at that time, before I even really knew it, that was kind of the budding of knowing that when I focused on something and I practiced discipline, I could really achieve it and get to something I wanted when I had a strong enough goal and a strong enough desire. And so that was kind of the path I took in high school. Never really good at any sports and tried playing baseball. I was third string bench warmer to a bunch of other athletes who ended up going 0-10 that season. So that tells you how good of a baseball player I was.
So now, what college did you decide on?
I went to the University of California in Santa Barbara. Definitely choose worse colleges. Right on the beach.
The struggle was real, right?
Right. So that was, it was essentially the perfect environment for a budding alcoholic like myself to venture into abusing that kind of substance. But it was a beautiful campus. I mean, you couldn't get any better. You couldn't get any more distractions than, what we were facing in the middle of coastal California.
So now for me, I've been clean and sober. I just celebrated 33 years on New Year's Eve.
Wow.
How did alcohol and school go together?
So alcohol and school did not go well together, but alcohol and my anxiety went really well together at that time. When I had my first drink when I was probably about 17 years old. I was visiting the campus for the first time, and that was when I decided to go there. I went to a party on Del Playa, which is the main street there, where all the parties happen in Santa Barbara, at UC Santa Barbara. And I remember having, this disgusting keg beer, but for me, it was my first sip. And as gross as it tasted, the feeling that it gave me was so, at the moment, it felt empowering. And I know looking back, obviously it wasn't, but it was manipulatively empowering. It was deceptively empowering, to the extent that I was now no longer socially awkward. I could talk to the opposite sex and not be intimidated about, asking them out or doing things like that. It all of a sudden became this elixir that, helped me, and it just felt good. And that first experience with alcohol was, I had 3 beers, I think, or something along those lines. I had a nice little buzz. Then I went home for the evening with no consequences, and everything felt normal. I had no reason at that time to believe that I would be a problem drinker. But in my mind, it was already starting to spin like, wow, this is great. This is what I want to have happen in my entire college experience.
Now, because I had my first drink at 12, and by the age of 13, I was a full-blown alcoholic. But for me, like you're telling my story, like when the first minute I had my beer or whatever I was drinking out of my mom's liquor cabinet, I was Richard. But as soon as I had my first drink, I became Rick. It's like I had all those superpowers. I could talk to everybody. I had no inhibitions. I had no fear. So, I totally get it. But eventually, the fun times would stop. Where like my friends, they'd be like, all right, it's Sunday. We're getting ready for school or work. And I'm like, what do you mean? So for
Right.
me, the fun times never stopped until they stopped being fun.
Mm-hmm. That's so relatable to me too, because I remember that specifically, like on a Sunday where it'd be like, yeah, let's go out and party. Let's have a good time. And then people were like responsible and stuff. And I was like, where's this coming from? We're supposed to be having fun. This is supposed to be college. And while it was fun at the very beginning, maybe for the first few months, I didn't immediately slip into these really horrible behaviors or anything like that. But gradually over time, as they say, drinking became less fun, and it became fun with problems. Like, I would be stopped for holding a beer outside my apartment and get busted for a minor in possession. Well, that's a one-off, no big deal. Or I would, black out at one point because I drank too much. Well, that was a little bit too much. Maybe I won't do that next time. But then it would gradually become, so fun with problems, but then it just became problems. And by my third year of college, it was just so debilitating. And there's a chicken or the egg argument here of what came first, because I mentioned earlier when I was in high school that I had that social awkwardness that was like a budding anxiety that was always somewhere below the surface, but I didn't know what it was. And by the time I turned about 20, I had my first full-blown panic attack in college, and seemingly without notice, I was just studying for an organic chemistry exam, which I guess is anxiety inducing enough. I mean, that's scary, but I remember that I just felt this intense reality enter my brain that because I was with a girl that I didn't know, or we weren't tested for HIV, that all of a sudden I knew with absolute certainty that I was HIV positive. Now, of course I wasn't, but that irrational fear just entered my mind, and it came with such certainty and such power that, and even as ridiculous as it sounds, it paralyzed me. And I remember just getting into the fetal position on the ground and crying, because I was alone, and it was so certain, and there was so much dread. And I didn't know what that was. But it would stick with me for a long time. And I realized at that point, at that point, the drinking became a stronger source of relief for me, because it ended those panic attacks. And that was the nature of where my panic attacks would come from. They would come from this place of irrational fear, and they would just come on without notice and continue on throughout my college life.
So now, because for me, I mean, no matter how old you get, you can still get panic attacks, and you can still have panics, and it can last months.
Sure.
Even adult, I'm 53, and last year I thought I was going through a health scare, and I would have put myself I had my funeral planned already. Until thank God they said, no, there's nothing wrong with you. But so I'm totally feeling that. So now, what happened when you got out of college?
So when I got out of college, I continued drinking, and I really graduated by the skin of my teeth. I was on academic probation pretty frequently. I switched majors a lot. I started as a music major, pretty quickly moved over to undeclared, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was pretty much lost. I just thought I had to be in college. And I ended up graduating with a psychology degree, because that was where my credits were essentially leading me, and it would get me out of there as quick as I could. And after college, I went into the family business to start working with the family business. We manufacture and distribute industrial chemicals for many of the Western states, and I continued to essentially. I continued to drink to monitor my anxiety, but my goal at that point, once I finished college, was really to be more functional and constantly prove to myself that I didn't have a problem. Meaning, I would set a large number of rules for myself. Not going to drink on the weekdays because it's work nights, and things like that. I'm only going to drink on the weekends. I'm not going to drink before 5 p.m. I was like an alcoholic gremlin, like with all these rules of trying to manage that. And of course, as as you're aware, it became as functional as I tried to be. It just became overwhelmingly stressful to continue to try and manage that. And my wife, who was then my girlfriend, would occasionally give me the ultimatums of saying, stop drinking or I'm going to leave. And she did that a number of times. And a number of times I would stop, let the heat come off, and the anxiety and the panic would become so overwhelming again, and I would manipulate my way back into a drink with her. That's the cycle that just continued for a very long time.
And then each time you had one, you were just off to the races.
Off to the races, yeah. It would be it would get progressively worse every time too, where to the extent where if on the weekends I would drink into a blackout. And of course, now instead of resolving my anxiety, I had been drinking for so long to resolve my anxiety that when I would come to in the morning, the anxiety would be every single day and with such intensity, because I was so shameful of the person that I was, that I was just trying to manage this life that wasn't really a life of any kind of balance whatsoever. And that kind of pain, that kind of shame was with me for almost a decade as I was drinking. But that's how I kind of managed myself over the course of those years.
Now, for me, as I talk about in my new book that I just dropped, it came out. I re-released it today with some bonuses, but I can actually pinpoint when I hit rock bottom. When I was actually, I just got away with not going to jail for 5 years for grand larceny, sitting in the bottom of the church, drinking nasty coffee, hungover, eating nasty cookies, and because I'm 20 years old, and there's these 50, 60-year-old guys who are just saying, sit down, shut up, and listen. And I was at the complete bottom. That was my bottom. So talk to us about the day you hit your bottom.
I hit rock bottom because I became something that I absolutely detested. And one of those rules that I was talking about that I shared with you earlier that I would never break was drinking and driving. That to me was crossing a line that was just so far beyond. And based on, what my belief system was, is that people who chose to drink and drive just didn't care about anybody else's life, and, went out and did that. So I got in the car in a blackout, and I was driving, coming back home from surfing one morning, and that's how bad it was. This was in the morning, and I was still drunk from the night before, and I turned through a red light and hit another car and got into a DUI accident. And I came to in the back of a police car with, it was pretty close to home. So neighbors were all surrounding me, looking at me as I was in the back of a police car. And doing all the sobriety tests that day and knowing that I would fail, I was even just resigning myself, just take me to jail. I mean, obviously I'm not sober here. And sitting in the jail cell, just wondering what had happened, trying to piece together that morning, and just feeling, I can't describe the shame that I had over that experience of becoming something that I absolutely detested. And thank God that nobody was hurt, because this would be a different, things would be much different today. I mean, I wouldn't be here today. That was my rock bottom. Sitting in the jail cell, trying to think of a way out that I could, wishing that God would just give me a heart attack at that moment so that I could just die easily. It's too much of a coward to kill myself. And, that's how I felt at that time. But fortunately, I believe that I had something of, just a spiritual intervention at that time, where my mind instead shifted to, I have a choice here. I have a choice to continue down this path, this choice that I thought I didn't have, this idea that I could never get sober, or I could never get the help. I'd been in AA, but I never related to people. And I'd always just, I'd never hit that point where it was just speaking to me yet. But this was that point where I was just like, I'm going to go in, and exactly as you say, I'm going to sit down, shut up, listen, and do everything that they tell me. And not make any of these lousy excuses that I used to make, which is, well, I got to get home to my family for dinner. I have to work in the morning, so I can't be here all night. I can't go to coffee with you guys tonight because of this. No, this getting sober was now the most important thing in my life, more important than my family, more important than than anything else, because without it, I was a danger not only to myself anymore. If I was a danger to myself, I'm fine with that. I was fine with that. But I was a danger to others, and I was something that I would never want to be again. And I did not want to be that anymore. So that brought me into the rooms of AA. And for, those first couple of years, I went to AA every single day.
Now, me, I think I hit something like, I was supposed to go to 90 court order days. I hit like 300 in a row or something stupid. Yeah. But, one thing, like I put out in my book, is now I'm starting to do personal coaching. And I tell people, I can turn your life around in 90 days, but it's going to take work, And for me, I love all the steps. I love every one of the steps. They work great. I believe in God. I'm a believer. So for me, I didn't have a problem with that. But I think the three most important, parts of the steps are, I got to tell everybody, I'll get you, I'll change your life, help you change your life. But you got to do three things. First, you have to write down everybody you've hurt and attempt to make amends, because obviously you can't make amends to everybody. Some people are no longer here, and but second of all, you have to write all the people that hurt you and forgive them. But the third thing I find is the hardest is forgiving yourself. Because for me, I think of, like if you're running on a treadmill, but you're constantly throwing stuff in a rucksack, eventually you're not going to be able to run anymore. But I think once you get, adding forgiveness into your life, I think, is when you can start pulling the rocks out of the rucksack and you become free. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great way of looking at it. Forgiving myself. I mean, the source of my shame, I had hit the rock bottom of shame at that moment. And I even had, the sense of, even at that time I was going to therapy, and my therapist was talking about this trauma that I had experienced, all this trauma. And I would always, as a veteran yourself, I would always feel ashamed about that because I didn't deserve to have that kind of trauma. I didn't even feel like I deserved that because I hadn't been through anything. I had a fine childhood. I had all of these things, but I didn't realize, and it took, years of therapy and all this to realize that I have a severe anxiety disorder that, that leads me down a lot of these paths and is a source of trauma for me, and that we all deal with some sense of trauma in our lives. And despite comparisons to other people or these kinds of things, which I did far too much of, I had that as well. And I had to own that, and owning that trauma in my own life, did serve as something of an inventory to start that process of forgiveness. And then learning to take care of myself beyond that, in going to AA and doing the things that I needed to do to live the life that I deserved, because we all deserve the opportunity for a good life. That was, the beginnings of the forgiveness. And by no means am I ever perfect at it. I mean, mentioning it, I had a panic attack just last week, but thank God I now have the tools to kind of work with them and work through it and understand it a little bit more, rather than having to pick up a drink today and deal with it. So. And,
I think a lot of people don't realize living a sober life, it's a lot harder than living a regular life. Like if my wife has a hard day, like I said, I got 33 years clean. I have wine downstairs. I've got liquor. I don't even care about it. But, she can come back home, have a twisted tea and relax. I have friends, they get stressed out at work. They go home, they pop a Xanax. Where us, we're like, what do I do? Do I eat? To overcome those things. Because you can't just have a drink. You can't pop a pill, or like a lot of people are taking CBD. You can't do that stuff when you're living a sober life. And I'm sure dealing with anxiety, that must have been a lot harder when you first got sober to deal with.
Yeah, it was. I mean, my bottom was so bad that it was almost something of I'd hate to say. I hate to put it this way because it's such a terrible event that led to my sobriety. But when I look back at the miracle that it was on the way it shifted my mindset into becoming a new person, I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Because when I got into sobriety, I was so all in that my goal at that point was the only thing I was really afraid of was my own mind taking me back out. So I was just so drawn in. I immediately went in, just like, got a sponsor, did the things, did the steps, went through all 12, made sure I got through the 4th step, because I was the epitome of the 1, 2, 3 waltz, So yeah, just doing all of those things, and then just immersing myself in the community, because I think community is so important to anything we do. Even as I evolved kind of beyond that next step, I think right now, when I look at the hard situations in my life, and I've been through more difficult challenges in my life sober than I was when I was drinking, especially more recently. But the thing is that every time I get through those things without having to have a drink, and I don't have the desire to do that today in any of those situations, it kind of strengthens that element of it. And I also know that I have new outlets for that. Fitness and health, for example. I know we want to look at our obsessions as bad things, but if we're obsessive in our personalities, sometimes having a channel for that is good, because we're going to have an obsession about something. If we're getting sober, a lot of times we replace that obsession with the obsession of going to AA or getting into recovery. That helps us recover. if we're getting into fitness, getting into that obsessive fitness is a way to do that. I remember one of the things that a lot of the elders told me in my first year of sobriety was, don't make any major life changes until your first year of sobriety. And what I heard at that point was, when you hit a year of sobriety, make a major life change, because that's how my brain works. And that's when I started, pursuing more fitness avenues and getting into that.
Well, a lot of people, because if you guys are watching, never been to an AA meeting, go to an open meeting. You will see people sucking down coffee, eating cake and cookies, because your brain uses the same some of the same brain waves that uses sugar, that uses alcohol and drugs. So a lot of people, once they quit that alcohol, they still have the sugar cravings. And that's when sometimes you'll see somebody gain 50 pounds in the first year, after they get sober, because they're still having the sugar craving, and they're not realizing, well, I used to drink a case of beer a day. Well, you think of all the sugar that had in it, your body's still craving sugar,
Right.
So.
Yeah, that was certainly the case for me. I mean, I went straight to eating. That was, when I was in AA, I took up, I became a heavier smoker too, because I knew that's where all the AA people hung out. So I was like, all right, I got to smoke too, so I can get more reversed. And, so I started getting back into that and a little bit more. And so for that first year, I was getting healthier from the mindset perspective and more empowered there, and more belief systems, but definitely not healthier from the physical standpoint. It was, that was pretty bad.
No, I still love going to AA meetings. But for me, I only go to men's meetings because I don't want to do drama. I don't, you see all these people in AA, NA, 13 step, and you're like, bro, you both got 2 weeks clean. What are you doing dating anybody? You know what I mean? So I go to men's meetings, but I also find that if you go to the same meeting, you'll see the same people, who's going to talk next. And you find out, all right, you're not drinking, but you don't have a job. You don't have a career. You don't have a wife. You don't have a family. You're not going anywhere. So all you're doing is not drinking. What kind of life is that? And I think a lot of people, when, young people, if they go to a meetings, they're like, man, if this is all sobriety has, this really sucks. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, now talk to us about, okay, you got a couple years under your belt. You started getting healthy. How did you start to reinvent your life? How did you start to get healthy? Because you can't just, I tell everybody, you can't just go run a marathon the first day.
Yeah.
And I think, we all, like, I worked with GNC for 30 years. Everybody, God knows, January 2nd, we're going to do like $10,000 worth of business. Everybody's going to come in and buy everything.
Yeah.
And then in March, just like crickets, you know what I mean?
Right.
So how the person, especially like, like my average listener is between 29 and 44, getting out of the military, out of shape, but want to get healthy again. Not worried about the bodybuilding crap, but just want to have functional muscle. How do you start getting healthy again?
So it's a great question. It's something that I failed with a lot because of my personality of, and because of the way our fitness industry is structured. It's a lot of like 90-day programs of getting like all this intense kind of things. And I was buying into that kind of stuff of just like, all right, I'm completely unhealthy now, but I want to get fit. 90 days sounds like a great plan. So I'm just going to, pump iron and do all this kind of stuff. Then I would injure myself. So I ended up actually injuring myself to the point where I had to have surgery. And with a year of sobriety, I was in bed with recovering from a shoulder surgery where I torn a labrum trying to do some aggressive stuff. And, at that time I was, again, a year sober. And so I was really contemplating that idea of, how do I get healthy and fit? I think for anybody that's just getting started, for me, it was something of a God thing, because being in that state, I was told by my doctor, well, you can't do anything intense. for like 6 months, and you have to start slow. So I was almost forced into starting slow. So I couldn't do my normal, routine. So I had to research how to kind of get into that. So I actually remembered, because my mindset had shifted a bit into this perspective of this empowered perspective of my mindset. And I'm sorry if I'm getting off track here.
This is no, I'm actually really, really interested in it, because I'm thinking as you're talking, I'm thinking, I know at least 20 people that, and now Andy Frisella, I love you. I love the MF CEO project, but I don't see a lot of people successfully doing 75 hard, because it's hard.
Yeah.
And you're doing it twice, working out twice a day. So I'm kind of thinking what you're talking about is, all these people that started all of a sudden having torn labrums, back issues, knees, and then they got to start from day one again, and they quit.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I think there's such great intentions with programs like that. There's such good intentions of wanting to get people healthy and fit. But I think people, especially in the fitness industry, who are immersed in this idea of always having been fit or healthy, and not having that beginner mindset, miss that whole point of, hey, what if we did 90 easy instead of 75 hard? Like, what if we did 90 days of just aerobic heart rate training? You would build such a strong foundation of fitness that on top of that, you could build whatever you want, and you're not injured, you're stronger. You've built good form because you started slowly, and you've built this amazing patience. I found that kind of training was such a great supplement to sobriety, because it promoted that sense of acceptance, of patience, of accomplishment, of growth that we're all looking for, that when we get into that kind of activity. So when I was, sitting laying in bed, recovering from that shoulder surgery and contemplating where I was at, of course, because I was immobile, I wanted to be mobile. And because of the shift in mindset of doing something that I never thought that I could do, which was get sober, my mindset had shifted from I can't, constantly saying I can't do things, I can't do that, to what if. I remembered at that point this point I had maybe a decade earlier, where I was watching the Ironman World Championship on television. I was watching the NBC broadcast, which is all full slow motion, these guys crossing the finish line, and all of these seemingly normal people doing this amazing thing, swimming 2.4 miles, biking 112 miles, running a full marathon all in one day. And then they finish with this smile on their face, and it's on the island of Hawaii. How much better can you get? My first thought about that when I saw that was, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. And then my immediate second thought was, you can't do that. You're a smoker, you're a drinker, you're out of shape, you're this, you're that. All of that, but that mindset had shifted, a decade later, when I was laying in that bed, when I was a year sober, when I was told you got to wait a year before you make major life changes. Well, what more major life change can you make than becoming an Ironman triathlete? And at that point I was asking, what if? So I signed up for an Ironman with my still in my shoulder sling, all this kind of stuff, a year later. And then I had to figure it out. And I realized that the way that most of those athletes were training, that a lot of the successful athletes, specifically Mark Allen, who was, world championship champion 6 times over, were training with this specific heart rate training called the Maffetone method.
Yep.
And I was just reading about it, I was like, wow, I was just so intrigued by it. But I was also afraid of it, because I was like, I know I can't keep my heart rate that low. But now I'm intrigued, and I know I should lean into some of these things I'm afraid of. So I started practicing it, and started going really, really slow. I mean, ridiculously slow, running at a 13-minute mile, or, just biking, spinning so slow that if I'd stop pedaling, I'd fall over. And so I started training like that, and gradually over the course of time, because of consistency, because of discipline, I would get faster under that heart rate. And that, to me, without knowing it at the time, became the foundation of what would be the most, I think the most effective beginner training program that that anyone could put out there to build that foundation of fitness.
And, I think a lot of people, for me, sometimes you even got to get even simpler than that. Sometimes you just I know when I go to the grocery store, I park all the way at the end. Like today it was 14 degrees. But I'm even if I just get 30 extra steps in a day, whatever it is, if I can get it in, it's, you lap everybody that's sitting on the couch.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah. Because living in California, in Southern California, where it never gets below 60 degrees, everybody's fighting for that front parking space and nobody's parked at the end. I mean, even there, that psychology is in there. But yeah, that's a great example.
And it's funny, I live here in New Jersey and there's a gym 5 minutes from my house and everybody's fighting for the parking space so they can go walk on the treadmill. And you're like, when you really think about it, you're like, did I just see that?
It's like a Far Side cartoon. Yeah.
But, I think, for me, I think my friend, he wrote a book. His name is James Clear. He wrote a book called Atomic Habits.
Love that book.
And he talks about how, you don't have to do 10% better every day. If you can just get that 1% better every day, and then actually, when you hit goals, to actually celebrate them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I think that they don't celebrate their wins. What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. And that's why I think that and by the way, I love Atomic Habits. I've read that book 3 times. It's and practice a lot of the same kind of habit trackers that are in there because they're just so valuable. And I love that. And that whole idea of I think it comes from the idea of making sure that our goals are specific, because how are you going to celebrate a win if you're not clear on your goals? How are you going to, if your goal, say, is to lose weight? I want to lose weight. I want to get fit. But what does success look like in that case? If you don't know what success looks like, you're never going to feel that sense of accomplishment or success. But and why I love and advocate for the sport of triathlon is because it's associated with an accomplishment, a specific goal. There's a finish line that you could say, if I finish that, I'm accomplishing something that I never thought that I could do. And you can even work your way backward so that you can get that sense of accomplishment, that you can't even escape the celebrating that success. If your goal is to finish a triathlon, you finish it. You can't escape that. And even down the path, I mean, if that's too big of a goal for you, you can work your way backward to the very next step, which is if say you want to complete a triathlon, but you don't even know how to swim yet, or you maybe success looks like getting into the water for the first time and just learning to float for 30 seconds. And doing that is an accomplishment. And if people write those steps down and get them very clear, and celebrating each of those incremental successes is so important, because once you arrive at that success, it's kind of like, so if you look at it from the standpoint of sobriety, we celebrate a lot of times it's celebrated in the rooms of AA with like a 30-day chip, because once you look at yourself from 30 days, it's like, wow, I just achieved 30 days. That was something I didn't think that I could achieve 30 days ago. And now I'm here, let's take the next day. Let's take that. And so I think that it is important to celebrate our successes, just like you say, and make sure that our goals to get to and defining success is specific.
Like for me, we had I threw my own mental health summit in April of last year. It's called Today I Decide. Because I believe the three most important words in English language are today I decide. Because once you make a decision, like I'm listening to, like we talked earlier, I'm listening to Awaken the Giant Within from Mr. Tony Robbins, and it seems like me and him are thinking some of the same things, that, who you are 5 years from now is going to be the decision you make in the next half hour.
I love that.
You just break it down, simple like that. and you start thinking about, like when I looked at, I was about to do 5 years in prison. Well, if I would have looked back 5 years, I would have seen, well, that's where it started.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, if you start thinking like, even like Tony says, sometimes you have to, think out of the box and throw the box away. Like he was talking about, it was Mr. Ed Milet. I love Ed. I love his podcast. And he was talking about a guy, he's going to do triathlon. He's like, I live in a state where you don't even have water. He's like, so I made a decision to learn to do, to be a triathlon. He's like, but we don't have any water around us. And he said, but I made it work. I found a pool. So I think it's pretty amazing when, once we make a decision, all we have to do is act upon that decision.
Absolutely. One step at a time, one pedal stroke, one foot, one thing at a time. And it doesn't have to be a big step. Just like Mr. Clear says, it can just put you 1% beyond your comfort zone. And if you're doing that every single day, you're growing every single day.
Now, if you guys don't know Tony Robbins, you need to know Tony Robbins. He was like at the very forefront. Well, not the forefront, but because then like for me, I'm a big history buff. I go all the way back to Andrew Carnegie. I go way back because I love to learn, because the mind hasn't changed in 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Think and Grow Rich, and like I'm actually interviewing the author of the book Rich Dad Poor Dad on Friday.
Oh, cool.
But she put out an audio book I'm listening to with Mr. Greg Reed about mindset. And I think everything is mindset. And I believe, like you were talking about earlier, if a person's not sick, but think they are sick, they will get sick. That what you obsess over is what you eventually possess. So talk about that, reverse engineer it for health, how they can reverse engineer it and become healthy by acting and thinking healthy.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I love that idea. What you focus on, where your focus goes, your energy flows. That's a Tony Robbins-ism. And if everything, in my opinion, starts with mindset, starts with, having that proper, shaping your mind, getting your mind healthy before, getting your physical body healthy. Your physical body's health comes from, your mental health as well. And so getting into the habits, and those habits can be different for everybody, but they just have to be empowering. Getting into those habits first thing every day and making sure that your morning is, the time where the very first thing in the morning that you shape your mindset to start your day and win the day. That's what at least I found to be one of the keys to success in reframing, the mindset and ultimately getting that down to the health standpoint. It's really, again, getting clear on your goals, getting clear on who you want to be and deciding, as you say, today you decide that you make that decision to become the person that you want to be. And then you build your habits in the morning around that. And then you take the actions necessary to continue on that process throughout the course of the day. But yeah, it all starts with the proper mindset.
All right. So now I've had many Navy SEALs, Rangers, high achievers. And one of the things, like my friend, his name is John McCaskill. He's a retired Navy SEAL commander. And he talks about how your rituals, evening and morning, will dictate your day. Now, Mr. James Clear says that, everything we do, almost between 40 and 60% of what we do every day is a habit. So talk to us about Adam, what his nightly rituals are and what his daily rituals are to set him up for success.
Absolutely. So I could do a lot better at night. I'll be honest with you. I need to nail that down a little bit better. My morning routine has been structured for many years now, and it's helped me kind of grow to where I've wanted to be. But essentially my morning starts off when I take 2 hours, because that's how important it is to me. 2 hours in the morning for myself. And what I'll do right when I wake up is I'll go downstairs and I'll drink a large glass of water. I'll drink and a little bit of there's kind of these athletic greens that I'll drink as well, but I'll make sure I get hydrated right away. And then I go back
and
upstairs.
that stuff tastes like ass.
It does. You're absolutely right.
I got friends, like some of my friends, like one of my friends owns one of the largest supplement companies in the world, NutriBio.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me some keto product, and I was like, it's an acquired taste.
It really is. Yeah. I didn't say that, empowerment has to be tasty, but it's just one of those things that became part of my routine. It gives me that sense of health. And then I go back upstairs and I do a 4 rounds of Wim Hof breathing, which I have found to, and this is just anecdotal, so this isn't, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I have found that from the standpoint of my immunity and my energy, that is one of the better things that I have done, because I've gotten sick less frequently since starting to do that a few years ago, and have just had much more energy and felt much more empowered after doing those rounds of breathing. And oxygen is free. I mean, it's the best way to start your day, with a breathing practice that's empowering, where you fill your lungs and you allow your lungs to just be cleansed with all of the abundant oxygen we have around us. And while I'm doing that practice, I'm thinking about that very thing. I'm thinking about the abundance around me, about how fortunate I am to be breathing in all of this oxygen that's free to me, that I've just been graced with. And so that's kind of the priming exercise. And I know Tony Robbins talks a lot about that too. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'll meditate for about 12 minutes. And 12 minutes is important to me, because you start to get into a little bit more of the practice at around 10 minutes. At least that's where I go. So 12 gives me that extra 2 minutes of doing that. And my intention there is not to clear my mind, because I really don't think that anybody can actually clear their mind. My intention there is just to observe and actively be an observer and not a catcher. In other words, I want to see my thoughts come and go like waves, but I don't want to grasp onto them and hold onto them and keep going. So that's the practice that I use, all while maintaining breathing and a mantra of relax and release. Following that, everybody's going to hate me for this, and nobody's going to want to try it, but I jumped into a freezing cold shower, where I do what Tony Robbins calls incantations, where I shout out and I yell out empowering things to me of what I want to be. So I will shout out that, I'm a master storyteller. I ask quality questions, produce quality answers, and I keep going on down the line with things that are important to me and what I want to be. And then I get out of the shower and I'm wide awake and I'm ready to kind of start my day. I do some reading after that, usually some empowering reading material, and I try to write about 500 words a day if I can. Yeah. So that's my morning, and exercise, of course. Missed that part, but yeah.
And I think, what the words that we say to ourselves are so important. Like, I love when I do my cardio, I have my Audible. I love Audible. Guys, for $15 a month, you can change your whole life for $15 a month.
That's right.
And I was listening to a book. I can't remember the guy's name. He wrote a book, I think, from homeless to billionaire. And he said, if you can just say 5 things to yourself 20 or 30 times a day, it helps talk you up. Like for me, my 5 things are, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm whole. A lot of people don't realize what being whole is. I'm wealthy, and I'm impacting millions of people. And if you say these things to yourself, eventually you start to believe it, and that's who you start to become. Just like, I stopped saying the word can't. Like I have, like I said, Sharon Lecter coming on Friday, And in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, they say that the only difference between poor people and rich people are the way they talk and the questions that they ask. So if you stop saying, well, I can't afford it. Well, rich people say, well, how can I afford it? But I think a lot of what you're talking about is talking to yourself. And people, if people sing in the shower, okay, so you yell at yourself in the shower. But you're getting something out of it. You're getting empowered. So when you get out of that shower, you're ready to fight the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And these are tools, they don't do anything. I mean, they don't do the work. Yeah. So, I emphasize, that's the priming. These are the tools that help me start my day with an empowered mindset, so that when I get on the bike trainer, for example, when I was building up and becoming a triathlete, I had a lot to learn, and it was intimidating. It was, I was a lot of times, I was thinking that I could never do that. I could never get to the Ironman World Championship. Once I learned what it took to get to the Ironman World Championship, that it would take a podium time where I would have to be running a 7-minute mile on a marathon after a 112-mile bike. I had no business doing that. But over the course of 4 years, with consistency and discipline and practicing those empowering things and shaping my mindset first thing in the morning to want to achieve that, it became completely possible. And I was able to, in 4 years, make that dream come true, going from a complete non-athlete without having ever really swam the distance or the length of a pool without huffing and puffing to, qualifying for the Ironman World Championship. Anything is possible. If I can do that, and if I can get sober, anybody can do it. Anybody can do whatever, I truly believe anything's possible.
Okay. So then, we're going to be winding down now, but you just said something that I think a lot of people were like, well, I can't do that. But they don't become friends with people that do that. Mm-hmm. For me, like I've been doing podcasting, I think now 3 years. We've had 380 episodes, something stupid. But I really didn't start elevating until I sat down with a gentleman named John Lee Dumas. And he gets 1 million downloads a month. He makes 150 grand a month doing podcasting. But, I started surrounding myself with people that are doing what I want to do. So did you do something like that where you started following people that were doing it, starting watching their videos, maybe even talking to somebody here and there? Because a lot of people, I hear, and I can't remember who said it. If you're around 5 millionaires, you're going to be the sixth. Mm-hmm. So, but now how about the same thing with trying to do what you did? Did you have to start getting into certain circles and learning?
I did, and I didn't do it right away. And that was a shortcoming of mine, because I was intimidated. At first, it's when I'm sitting there and I'm unhealthy and I've never really even participated in 2 out of the 3 sports that I'm trying to do, trying to go into a group and of triathletes and saying, hey, I want to be one of you guys was really intimidating for me. So I didn't tell anybody for a very long time. The only person I told was my wife. And so it was really just willpower. And I think that was a mistake, because what I learned over time was that it was the most welcoming, supportive community that I could have ever asked for. So just kind of inching my way in through like Facebook groups or through local meetups, I started meeting these people and I started relating to them. And what I found actually was that there is a pretty profound recovery community within endurance sport. It attracts a lot of people like me. And I started to build a community around that. And over time, I became one. And that's when my mindset shifted into knowing that I was a triathlete, not just an aspiring triathlete. And I do that even now. I'm more inclined to join groups that will help me to become empowered and that I can give back to as well, in how I try and level up now.
So now this is the last question I ask. what are you doing now, and how can we support whatever you got going on?
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I have a book coming out. That's what I've been working on for the past year or so, has been getting this book released, which is coming out on February 8th. I think by the time this airs on the podcast, that the book will be out on Amazon. So pick it up there. And I'm sorry. Yeah, it's called Shifting Gears from Anxiety and Addiction to a Triathlon World Championship. And it shares my story of recovery and recovering from and living with anxiety and overcoming fear to really live an abundant life. And I am also, working on a number of different platforms for triathletes to level up level up themselves in the sport, and primarily beginners, but I really want to help people like me who were intimidated when they first started out to learn about the sport in a safe and healthy way and get started the right way without burning themselves out, without getting injured. So they can look for the book. They can look at www.shiftinggearsbook.com. And for anything else related to me, they can look at www.adamhilltry.com. All one word.
Now, I know you sent me a copy of the book. I mean, a little bit of the book, and I can't wait to read it. I'll probably read it tonight before I go to bed. So, bro, I just want to say thank you for coming on today. I truly appreciate you. Like I said, I don't know crap about triathletes, but now you got me piqued my interest. So I'm sure I'm going to go down that deep, dark, and try that wormhole and find out all about it. So I just want to say thank you and for taking the time out to hang out with me today.
Well, the pleasure was all mine. I'm so grateful for this opportunity and so thrilled with what you're doing out there too. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. So guys, remember, definitely check out Adam, check out everything he's doing. Want to thank our sponsors, Operation Veteran Freedom, helping veterans, when they get out of the military. Sometimes we don't have a mission, so they help you get another mission. If you guys love coffee, please check it out, Vertical Momentum Coffee. And the new book, it just dropped. A lot of bonuses on it, so definitely check it out. And I just want to say thank you for always being with us. Please leave a comment for Adam, for myself. As you guys know, I don't get paid for doing this, so if you could just do that for me, that would be my payment. And guys, just remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. Catch you on the flip, guys.